Now, we often hear about the American dream, but what about success stories here in Britain? My next guest knows what it's like to work your way up from the bottom. Aged 13, a military coup forced his family to leave Nigeria and start a new life in the East End of London. They had little money, but against the odds, that 13-year-old has gone on to become Britain's first black police and crime commissioner. Earlier this week, I sat down with Festus Akinbusoye. We discussed his journey into the role, the racism he suffered along the way, and one of the top stories of the week, trust in policing. Festus Akinbusoye, thank you so much for coming on Beth Rigby Interviews. Now, you're a very interesting man with a very interesting future. You are the country's first black police and crime commissioner. What does that achievement mean to you?
For me, it means that actually this is a country where anything is possible. I remember some people saying to me, with a name like Festus and Akinbusoye, no one will vote for you. And they were wrong. I ended up winning the highest share of votes of any police and crime commissioner in that area. It just goes to show that anything is possible.
Your story begins with your childhood growing up in Nigeria. Can you explain how you and your family came to settle in the UK when you were 13 years old?
Well, Dad was a politician in Nigeria, and having won an election, I know there was a real political instability at the time. A military dictator came into power and all the elections were overruled. So Dad came to England and we came to join him, my twin sister and I and my mum. And that was quite a culture shock for us. I mean, we lived in a pretty affluent environment. We were very comfortable. To now living in a two-bedroom flat, 4 of us with another family of 4, so 8 of us, in a 2-bedroom flat in Upton Park. Quite a contrast.
And your dad became an immigrant, holding down 3 jobs.
As a cleaner, yes.
To make ends meet. Did it hurt his pride?
Absolutely. You know, but the thing that actually taught me was that so long as you're working hard and you're willing to put in the effort, you've got to do what you've got to do to provide for your family, despite the difficulties. And sometimes you've got to start at the bottom, and that's okay.
I just want to talk a bit more about your politics. You stood for election as an MP in West Ham in 2015. Why is it, do you think, that ethnically diverse people in the UK, that 64% of them, according to the recent polling, shows that they vote Labour and 20% vote Conservative?
I think there's some generational aspect to this, where people tend to vote the way their parents voted. So it's no surprise to me that when first-generation migrants come to the UK, they sometimes see the Labour Party as the party of the working people.
When Kwasi Kwarteng was Chancellor, a Labour MP called him superficially black because he was a Tory. What did that instant make you feel as a black Conservative?
That was exceptionally disgusting. It was exceptionally, in my view, racist and stereotyping in the worst way, because it was suggesting that to be black, you have to be able to speak a certain way. To be black, you cannot go to Eton or Oxford or the top schools in the world because that's not what black people do. I thought was reprehensible.
The Sewell report, which examined racial disparities in the UK, got into hot water when it appeared to conclude that UK society wasn't institutionally racist. What was your take on that?
I can hand on heart say, personally, the colour of my skin has never prevented me from achieving anything I wanted to achieve in this country. That said, there is no question in my mind that there are racist individuals out there. I get the abuse from some of these on social media. There is one that might be coming in the public domain in months to come in terms of the racial abuse and that I've received.
What do you mean?
Well, I won't be able to go into too much detail about it.
But you've had to complain about it.
It was quite a serious one.
Right.
You know, with threats to my family. It was quite a serious one.
Okay.
Quite a serious one. But
I'm
look,
sorry. I'm sorry you've suffered that.
You know, Diane Abbott faces this. You know, David Lammy faces this. Kwasi, as you just mentioned, faces. Kemi faces this. You know, Rishi now is facing it. You know, it's unfortunately there are some people in Britain who do not like to see people with this different skin colour in positions of influence and power.
Boris Johnson has written in the past, and I know it was a long time ago, but he did talk about pickaninnies and watermelon smiles. Did that trouble you?
I think he might have apologised for those. If you were to ask him again if he will use those same language in another book, I'm sure he probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't think there's any room for that kind of language. It's not something that I would.
Well, look,
endorse.
let's get back to you. Let's stop talking about all these other politicians. Let's
That's
talk about
fine.
a potential
We could
future
talk about them as well.
politician. You are, as I said, the first black police and crime officer. You yourself have been stopped and searched, I think, at least 6 times.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. 3 times in London when I was growing up here. Once in Hertfordshire, once in Buckinghamshire, and once in Bedfordshire.
I wanted to ask you, has it happened to your sons? Do you worry for your sons?
Thankfully, it hasn't happened to any of my children yet. But the thing is this, I have used, because I trained to be a special constable with Bedfordshire Police before I became a police and crime commissioner. And I got to see for myself firsthand how the powers are used. I got to see the necessity of it, and it's something that we need, the police need to have in their arsenal in keeping our communities safe. But it's a blunt tool.
So you support it, though?
I support the appropriate use of it.
Right.
And the justifiable use of it.
Do you think it's used inappropriately often?
Sometimes, without question, of course.
OK.
When I was, I think, 19 years old.
Yeah.
I was coming from basketball practice in Whitechapel, and I got stopped, and I asked the officer, why did you stop me? And he said to me, just to make sure you're not one of London's most wanted. That was it.
How did that make you feel? Were you angry?
At the time, I didn't really care because I knew a lot of my friends dealt with that. But the older I got, knowing what I know now, I'm like, well, that was just wrong. There was no need for that. I just would love to see policing also understand how its coercive powers have an impact on people who are most affected by it as well. I mean,
someone called you a traitor when you took this job. Was that... Was it painful for you, but did you understand why? Can you understand?
No, I couldn't understand why. Absolutely not. I mean, you know, I'm a conservative because I want to be. I know my history as a black person. I know the history of this country. I'm not in denial of it. I welcome and celebrate the good, but, you know, of course, I have to accept they're not very good as well. But the Conservative Party is not a monolithic group. For someone to give me grief just because I'm in one political party and they think the colour of my skin should not fit into that political party, I think it's just
Or was
wrong.
it because people feel that the police is institutionally racist and it's disproportionately targeting young black men in stop and search, etc., so people are mistrustful?
Well, I mean, I've been called traitor for that as well, you know, but, you know, my thing is this. I feel very passionate about law and order, but there are those who, like Carrick, who really are a total shame to the uniform that they wear. But I'm here because I want to make policing better for all of our communities.
In London, where you grew up, black Londoners make up 13% of the capital's total population, yet account for 45% of London's knife murder victims and 61% of knife murder perpetrators and 53% of knife crime perpetrators.
Yeah. This is a very controversial one because there are some people who would say, well, stop picking on black people, whatever it is, but the evidence is what it is. The numbers don't lie. I think there are issues that need addressing as a community, but it won't be addressed by people finger pointing, oh, well, there you go, because you're black, you're more likely to be killed, so I'm going to stop you more for any reason, whether you like it or not. I think we need to try to find the right balance here. This is one of the reasons why I choose, at some cost to me and my family, to be as public as I am. And it's because I want those young men to see that, whether they're black or white, whatever the case might be, that, you know, you can come from a council estate and be where I am today. Yes, you can be a football player. Yes, you can be a musician or be a Stormzy or you could be a Burner Boy, whatever it is you want to be. You can be whatever you want to be. you know. But the reality is this: there is an underworld that is driving a lot of this violence in our community, which we don't really talk about as well, which does not have the racial dimensions or the racial narrative, which is the use of drugs. You know, a lot of the stabbings, a lot of the violence are driven by the demand for drugs in Britain, which is phenomenal. And, you know, I would love to see more police resources being used in dealing with this demand side that is also driving this violence in our communities as well.
So you think that not enough resources put into this area because it is young black boys who are suffering rather than middle-class white boys?
That's a tricky one. And I would not want to assume motive, but I see that a lot of effort is going around enforcement on those who sell and who deal, but a lot less goes on dealing with the users. A huge amount of resource goes into enforcement for those who are selling, but very, very little goes into dealing with the demand.
As opposed to the middle-class richies taking cocaine?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where there's a demand, there will be a supply.
OK. So you think that that is unfair?
I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
I need to ask you about the David Carrick case this week. I know he was a Met officer, but the case surely has ramifications for all forces.
Oh, massively.
He's not one bad apple, is he? He's part of a culture. How much do you think it undermines the police?
When I was giving evidence before the Home Affairs Select Committee, I said that I am tired of hearing this line of one bad apples. We need to stop talking about that. Quite rightly, and damn right, the public expect there to be no bad apples. But in the real world, policing, because of the nature of what it is, will unfortunately attract people who have ulterior motives. And if they can get through that system, they will be able to manifest those things.
How worried are you that a man with his record could join the police force, maintain it over many years, despite all the signs he was violent and intimidating?
Had been vetted as well several times.
And he'd been vetted several times.
But the solution can't be just about vetting alone, because clearly, as we can see from this Carrick case, people who have been vetted still get through, despite evidence. But we need to also have a situation whereby people who complain within policing or externally are taken more seriously, and this is looked into. So in Bedfordshire now, since I became PCC, about 7 officers have been dismissed.
So are you confident that this couldn't happen in your police force?
I would be dishonest if I was to say that that could never happen, because, like I said, we've got 7 officers who have been dismissed. There are now, I think, about 27 live cases that they're still investigating for Bedfordshire alone. But not all of them are like rapes, or there could be all kinds of different issues, misogyny, racism, you name it. 27 live cases. 27 live cases. But what I choose to do as a police and crime commissioner, which many other PCCs are doing, is that I'm holding my chief constable accountable every single month for this. He spends time on the front line with the officers, he gets to pick up things, and already we are seeing the benefit of that.
Finally, do you think that having a Prime Minister from an ethnic minority, Rishi Sunak, our first ethnic minority and Hindu Prime Minister, a massive achievement, do you think it makes it easier or harder for the Conservative Party to win an election under him? I
think ultimately it will be the economy that decides what people think, how people feel in their pockets, in their bank account. In terms of his ethnicity and encouraging others, I think sometimes in this country, you know, Beth, we understate the really, really good thing that's happening here. You know, when Barack Obama became the first black president, everybody was up and up with it. Everybody loved it. It was a great thing. But when we have the first, brown-skinned, prime minister ever in this country, what's the big deal? You know, I think we talk down this country a bit too much, and some of our major achievements. I think we should celebrate Britain a lot more than we do. OK, well, Festus, thank you so much for giving me your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. Pleasure.